human-animal plant is organized into a biological hierarchy. From the simplest single-cell organisms to the most complex, this taxonomy is crucial to our understanding of the functions of each species, how they work together, and what makes them unique. The hierarchy begins by dividing life into kingdoms, then descends into more descriptive ranks like phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and so on, classified according to their shared characteristics. In the animal kingdom, we are most familiar with the phylum Chordata, which we split into classes like reptiles, amphibians, fish, birds, and mammals. But on the broader scale, there are many other phyla, and seemingly endless possibilities for diversity. According to modern science, these kingdoms include every living thing on Earth. But what if creatures existed outside of these classes we know? Do cryptids really exist? According to Merriam-Webster, a cryptid is an animal that has been claimed to exist, but never proven to exist. Since ancient times, there have been legends of other creatures yet to be proven by science. Animals like the kraken, minotaur, or unicorn are all cryptids our forefathers believed in, though no evidence of any has ever been found. Examples of cryptids that did turn out to be real are the platypus, which, when specimens were sent back to Europe from Australia, people thought it was a hoax, and that a duckbill had been sewn on to another creature. The giant squid, which many people think was the kraken from ancient mythology, is only now found living in the deepest parts of the ocean, the places humans rarely go. And the okapi, which looks like a cross between a zebra and a giraffe. They were a legend in Africa in the 17 and 1800s, but only in the 1900s was a specimen confirmed. But how about cryptids today? Let's take a look at one of the most famous cryptids of all, Bigfoot. In Northern American folklore, Bigfoot, also known as the Sasquatch, is an ape-like creature that walks upright like a man. Bigfoot sightings usually occur in heavily wooded areas. This video was taken in the dense woods of Oregon. Notice how the creature resembles an ape. Its fur seems black in color, it walks hunched over, and its arms seem long. However, it does seem to walk more upright than an ape. Is this a video of the elusive Bigfoot?
It's about, 2:30 a.m. And we just come out and we got another trackway.
In Ontario, Canada, some locals find Bigfoot tracks in the snow using the night vision on their cameras.
We can pretty much guarantee 2 trackways every night we show up here. They go both ways. Both ways up the road here. These are fresh too, because it's
brand new.
Yeah, because it's snowing. These ones are just a little older. But this is like brand spanking new because it's snowing out.
Later, they find what appears to be Bigfoot
Drew
writing.
my glyph on the car. Holy. Those are spanking. Right now. Those are from earlier, but that isn't.
And even claim to have recorded audio of a Bigfoot. From the snows of Ontario, we head south for our next cryptid. The chupacabra is said to be a leathery-skinned creature with cloven hooves, 2 sharp front fangs, and a thirst for blood, attacking and sucking dry the body of local farm animals, giving it the name the goat sucker. Sheriff's deputies in DeWitt County, Texas, caught this strange animal on their dash cam. Dr. Phyllis Canyon found a strange animal attacking her chickens on her Texas ranch. One of the creatures was hit by a truck, and Dr. Canyon was then able to begin examining it in more depth.
We did many skin samples where we went in with a little instrument and just plucked out hair pores to detect, to see if it had any type of, whether it be sarcoptic mange or any type of eczema, seborrhea, dermatitis, anything on the skin that was indicative to why it would not have any fur. And everything came back negative. So it has a light coat of fuzz all over the entire body, which rules out in most cases that it would have had the mange, because when an animal is affected with mange, generally they rub that area raw because of the irritation to it. We've done DNA at 5 different universities across the United States, some in Texas, some out of the state, and all of the DNA has come back that it had coyote on the maternal side and Mexican wolf on the paternal side. Normally, those animals do not breed with each other. So that was a question that we had. The other thing that we find the most bizarre are these nodules that we have on the back. In the beginning, everybody that looked at them said, well, they were some type of a gland, and they were a growth, and they were, this and that. But we ruled out all of it, and in fact, 2 of the DNAs that we sent off, we did an incision right underneath here, and we took the tissue sample from this, and it was no different than the tissue that we took off the body when we did the DNA on it. And to this day, still, everyone is totally perplexed as to why those are there.
Could this be the chupacabra of legend? Next on Proof, we've seen some bizarre land cryptids, but what about the most famous one that might live in our waters? And is there a Mothman patrolling the skies in West Virginia? While Bigfoot and the chupacabra are well-known legends, in Scotland's Loch Ness, a creature may dwell, known as the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie. It's been described to look like an ancient plesiosaur with a long neck and small head. Steve Feltham has dedicated his life to finding Nessie. His daily vigil has lasted over 21 straight years, putting him in the Guinness Book of World Records.
I first came here when I was a 7-year-old boy in 1970 on a family holiday, and at that time there was an expedition and they had this tripod on the end of this platform sticking out of the hillside, and the camera lens on this tripod was 1 meter long. It just amazed me as a small boy, 7-year-old child, seeing grown men in Britain looking for monsters. And I just fell in love with the whole mystery and the whole adventure and just got hooked on the whole subject. The first written account of anything here at Loch Ness is actually in 565 AD, and through the centuries after that, the locals always reported seeing what they used to describe as giant mystery fish. And most of those sightings can be dismissed as people's hopeful imagination, but there's reliable eyewitnesses that are describing the back of something, like an upturned boat with the skin of an elephant, so a grey, tough skin, very fast, very big, and very unexplained. In 1934, there was one photograph taken which is called the surgeon's photograph, and it's the classic neck sticking up out of the water. Unfortunately, it got proven to be a fake, but we still have other great pieces of evidence. There was a film shot in 1960 by a guy called Tim Dinsdale, and the thing going off across the water and then along the far shore in the water is, to this date, unexplained.
The attention from Loch Ness has sparked rumours around the rest of the world about their own possible lake monsters. In Lake Champlain, a freshwater lake in the US between New York and Vermont, there have been over 300 sightings of its own lake monster, nicknamed Champ. Supposedly, the Iroquois Indians that live near the lake had legends of the monster. Historians think it might be a sturgeon that still lives in the lake today, but the sightings report the creature to be over 200 feet long, 10 times the length of a sturgeon. In the early 1980s, lawmakers from New York and Vermont passed bills to make Champ a protected species. Is it true belief, or just good public relations? And why has there been no clear video footage of this protected species? Why is Champ as equally elusive as Nessie? Shockingly, in 2016, a video did appear, but this one was from Alaska's Bureau of Land Management. Apparently, they had filmed their own monster. The creature's body seems to undulate to move through the water. It appears to have a white coloring on top. Skeptics say this may be a fallen tree or a piece of rope, but later in the year, Alaska's Bureau of Land Management released this picture of the same spot after the ice had melted. No sign of a rope or the creature. It remains a mystery. Even more mysterious is our next cryptid, one that West Virginia folklore is said to have the body of a man, glowing red eyes, and a 10-foot wingspan, the Mothman. On November 20th, 2016, a new Mothman sighting had been reported in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, along with an alleged photo. With nothing in the photo for size comparison, it's difficult to figure out what it is. However, it could be an ordinary bird carrying something such as a snake, which gives the appearance of legs hanging down. Do you believe that a Mothman could exist? Locals do. A West Virginian YouTuber takes us on a tour of the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant.
You can find your way to Mothman through the study of monsters, spirits, UFOs, West Virginia history, or most commonly, folklore and urban legend. I'm a Mothman historian, a Keelian investigator, and a West Virginia folklore enthusiast. I've sought out to do what better men than me have tried and failed at, to have an interest in the paranormal and my local legends, while remaining skeptical and avoiding the dangerous clutches of belief. I continue my adventures across West Virginia to interesting locations of folklore tales. To understand our culture and ourselves, we must also understand our modern myths. We also cannot ignore the ever-present possibility that some disturbing truth might surround us, somewhere camouflaged within our misconceptions, and hiding within our ignorance. On November 27, 2016, I returned to Point Pleasant, home of the Mothman legend. Despite the dedicated work of many great investigators and legendary minds, the quest continues.
The first Mothman sighting took place in 1966 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Shortly after, a handful of West Virginians claimed to have seen the humanoid figure. A local newspaper headline declared, "Couples see man-sized bird, creature something." Thus began a rash of sightings over the next year, which culminated in a tragic event for Point Pleasant, the collapse of the Silver Bridge. A disaster that killed 46 people. The sightings ended immediately.
After we turned right there on that graveled road heading down there, we got about halfway when I noticed something was running along beside the car. Well, I thought I was seeing things when I turned and looked at it. And I looked at my brother and I said, "Did you see what I saw?"
Next on Proof, we've seen strange examples of cryptids on land, sea, and air. Now, our experts discuss whether these are examples of real animals or examples of wishful thinking. Our expert on the side of belief is paranormal investigator Gin Kelly, consultant for Nerdist and Bizarre States, and a member of the National Cryptid Society. And our expert skeptic is Robert Schaefer, mathematician and astronomer.
Cryptids is a relatively new term. as more of a modern application. And it came about by taking into consideration decades, centuries, in some cases thousands of years of accounts and eyewitness sightings of things that nobody could really explain at the time. In order to say, for example, Bigfoot doesn't exist, in order for that to be quantifiable, that person would have to have a constant stream of knowledge that is coming from all things that is happening in the habitated areas where Bigfoot is reported. I don't know anyone that can do that. And if they're denying something based on a belief rather than actual scientific fact, then that's ignorance.
We don't have any evidence for cryptids at this time. That's why they would be called cryptids, hidden animals. People talk about the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Mothman, you name it. There's all kinds of these things. What they all have in common is that you can't prove that any of them are real. A lot of people claim to have evidence of Bigfoot, and you find these tracks. People make, plaster casts of tracks and things like this. But none of it is really, consistent or convincing. You can't track Bigfoot the way you could track a bear through the woods. You might find one footprint or something, and who knows where that came from. People walk around with these phony big feet and making tracks in the woods. As far as DNA, well, there have been claims that, somebody found remains and here's DNA from a Bigfoot, but it never checks out. It's a dog or something like that,
Bigfoot is an interesting cryptid because it's one of the few cryptids that's actually ingrained in American history in the frontier era. It has numerous sightings throughout history by thousands of people. Even now, every year, hundreds, sometimes thousands of people come forward and make a claim that they have seen Bigfoot. This cryptid is also interesting because it's rooted in a fossilized record. The initial findings with Gigantopithecus was that it was a large ape-type creature. They found the mandibles of fossilized remains of one. The jawbones were massive, so they were anticipating that Gigantopithecus was anywhere from 18 to 25 feet tall, big. We're talking prehistoric here. So if there was a precursor to Bigfoot, that's a pretty good place to start.
I actually went on a Bigfoot expedition with the late Eric Beckyard, who was a very well-known Bigfoot guy. There was a spot in the Sierras, Northern California, up the hill from Jackson, California. Didn't see any Bigfoot, but he would take pictures of the trees, the leaves of the trees, and then magnify them greatly afterwards. And then in the shadows of the leaves, they will interpret what they see as, evidence of something paranormal. But if you really want to be strict about it, say, okay, what is this really? Well, it's just the shadows, that some of them look like a face.
The Loch Ness Monster sightings are really interesting. Now, just as Bigfoot had a potential relative in Gigantopithecus, so does the Loch Ness Monster. Everyone that witnesses it says it looks like a plesiosaur.
There have been a lot of so-called scientific expeditions that have gone to the Loch Ness and have looked under the water and above the water for things. They drop cameras and little submarines and they go down there and look. And you see a few ambiguous-looking shapes and things, but again, where's the monster? Where's the head and the tail and the fins or whatever? We have a lot of technology nowadays with cameras now are everywhere, as well as all the people going there and trying to look under the water with underwater cameras and find things. Certainly by now, we would have found something if there is anything to be found.
There are several factors that relate to the believability of this particular cryptid. One is its habitat. The Loch Ness is really deep. You could easily hide something of that size in that body of water. It's also covered with peat at the bottom. Now, peat, once it's stirred up, it stays in the water floating for quite some time, so it makes the water very murky and cloudy. Visibility in the loch is literally about a foot in front of your face, and then that's about it. So it makes any type of in-depth scientific research at the bottom or in the lake in general very difficult.
It's great for a town to have a cryptid in the area because then that will bring in tourists and bring in tourist dollars.
Even now today, we're discovering new species of life that no one knew existed. We're talking about 1,500 new types of aquatic life that no one knew about. Research teams that are stationed in the Amazon rainforest, on average, discover a new type of animal every other day.
But invariably, these kinds of discoveries of new species are really just slightly different from the species that we know about, a different type of a dog or a pig or something like that. It's not really very different from what we already know about. Cryptids, on the other hand, are something completely outside, completely different from any known animal. And yet here we have this supposedly huge thing of Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster. It's hiding in plain sight. We can't find it, and yet it's a huge thing. That really doesn't make any sense.
There are a number of animals that were declared extinct that miraculously appeared years later, decades later, in some cases hundreds of years later, including a specific type of elephant in the Bornean Mountains. This elephant disappeared, was named extinct by scientists, and it turned out to be, not only were they living just further up into the mountain range where people couldn't get to, they were thriving. This is an elephant. This is not a small creature. And you're talking about a thriving community that was simply overlooked by science so much that they declared it extinct.
None of them ever seem to die. Maybe cryptids must be immortal because, Bigfoot, where's a dead Bigfoot? You could find a dead deer or a dead bear in the woods. Why do we never find a dead Bigfoot in the woods?
My answer to that is pretty simple, is that in California, there's an estimated 30,000 to 40,000 black bears that are roaming around, okay? Nobody I know has seen the body of a black bear while out walking. But we know that they're there. In fact, we know that they're there in a pretty good number, but we haven't found a body. Now, why is that? I don't have that answer, but it's consistent behavior with remains that are left out in the wild.
Animals, they either lay eggs or give birth to young. Where's a baby Bigfoot? What does a baby Bigfoot look like? If these were real animals, then these things would exist and we would see this. We would see the dead bodies and we would see the babies and we would see all these things. It doesn't exist.
I've actually never seen a cryptid or anything that I could confuse as a cryptid. However, I still believe the possibility is very strong that they exist. And this is based on science. This is based on math. This is based on how much of the world do we actually know about? What's at the bottom of the deepest place in the ocean? We don't know. What's in the middle of the Pacific Northwest in the woods? We don't know. It's vast enough to support all kinds of life that we may just have not discovered yet.
Though these cryptids seem to have a place in folklore, there is still very little evidence of their existence. For you to believe in cryptids, have we shown you enough proof?